So you may not be a pro pickleball player, but in our eyes, you're definitely a true professional in the world of pickleball. So right now, we are proud to bring you Pros Asking Pros questions.
We got quite a few here for you. I'm really excited for it. And the first one I'm going to play here is actually from Melissa McCurley.
Hey, Rusty. You and I go back about 6 years now. And through those 6 years, I have admired your focus, your commitment, and your dedication, and your passion for the game of pickleball. And I couldn't have been more proud when you and your team won the Impact Award at the US Open last year. So my first question is, what fuels that drive, that focus, that passion that you have for pickleball? And my second question is, when you're not on camera, why do you look so mean? Bye, Rusty.
Okay. So now, I don't know if she told you the whole mean thing. It's sort of an inside joke. I can get kind of intense. The irony is I'm the youngest of three boys. I was the clown, the goofball. Even around my family, I'm constantly embarrassing my kids. But I do, I guess, put on a more serious face when I'm working, right? It's game time or whatever. And I try to be professional. So for whatever reason, I guess I was always focused and intense. And when you have a small team, like, we have tried to do, when we had the truck at the US Open, we had basically a team of 12 to 15 people. But in the first part of the week, this year actually was going to be the first year that any tournament at the US Open, we had it lined up. We were going to invest more money than anybody. We were going to have a full production team with a full truck for the entire tournament. It would have been the first time in history that many professionals had covered it. Now, someone could say it wasn't that good, but point being is, in previous years, the beginning of the week, we got like 4 or 5 people trying to do the job of 15. That's like when you guys try to do a stream yourself, right? Mm-hmm. So I guess I'm always running around real intense. And so one time Melissa's mom is just like, oh yeah, Rusty's not that nice. He's not that mean or whatever. So I had to take we made a joke and I made some grumpy pictures, or I sent off like a really goofy video to her. And so that's sort of the inside joke, that I'm just this really grumpy bastard all the time. That's what she meant. But so when I'm not doing pickleball, I tend to actually be a bit more of a goofball and whatever. So to answer a question about the sort of the passion, I think part of it is I just sort of dive into whatever I get into. My wife, who's my partner, Meredith, and so shout out to Meredith, who's the best person in the world. And if anybody bumps into her, if it wasn't for her, Pickleball Channel wouldn't exist. But on top of that, I go along and I can sort of get distracted and I just dive into stuff, right? So I can shut down other things. And she made a joke. She's like, you could go to a grass growers convention, and at the end of the grass growers convention, you'd be asking questions and doing things, and people are like, wow, you're really passionate about grass growing, aren't you? And I guess part of me, I love helping people. So I fell in love with the pickleball community, and I became committed to do what I thought was best for pickleball, not just what was best for me or even what was best for Highlands. So it was amazing that Highlands is the parent company, Highlands Leg Cramps is the product. They gave us the freedom to grow this for pickleball, not just for promotion, if that makes sense. It's a fine line. It has to be good. It has to be worthwhile. But I fell in love with the people, and then I'm like, okay, you go to these tournaments, and I almost cried watching Melissa's thing, and I cried when we won the award at the US Open. You've been to tournaments, you have these volunteers in their 70s, some of them are in the 80s, and they get there at 6 a.m. and they work into the end, and I'm thinking, there is no way that I cannot give as much of myself that they're giving. So I think the inspiration of the volunteers, the inspiration of the people who brought pickleball to where it is, it's everybody who just did free clinic after free clinic after free, they just poured their lives into this, thousands and thousands of hours. And so that kind of inspires me to try to do the same thing. And maybe that, partly I'm high energy, I talk fast, I walk fast, I'm from the Northeast. But I think if it wasn't for the people, I would have given up a long time ago.
This next one actually comes from the one and only Rob Davidson.
It's Rob Davidson here in St. George. Hope you guys are doing well. My first question for Rusty is, when are you going to be in St. George next? We're going to be holding the Pickleball Legacy Scholarship Foundation Tournament in October, right after the Huntsman. We had a little bit of reschedule, but now we're good for in October. So think about coming out and checking it out. My second question is, Rusty is a professional videographer, has done a lot for pickleball, but I'm curious about what his proud work is outside of pickleball. So if you can tell me a little bit about your non-pickleball project that you're proud of, that would be good.
Hi, Rob. Thank you. We were very fortunate to be able to work with Rob recently. So his first we did a quick tip with him. If you haven't seen it, it's pretty good on our channel when we were down at Bobby Riggs with Steve Dawson. So thanks for that, Rob. St. George. I love St. George. That's where Huntsman was. So that's sort of near and dear to us because it's where I found pickleball, right? And the Little Valley Complex is one of my favorite because it's really spread out. It's really nice. So Rob, I don't know the answer, but I was actually just talking to Wayne, who's from Parks and Rec in St. George, about trying to figure out when to come out. Utah has opened up earlier than I'm in Los Angeles. We still have to wear face masks every time we go out. So I've actually joked about heading to Utah so that I could maybe shoot a little bit. So it might be earlier than you think. In terms of what am I proud about outside of pickleball? Well, just life. I'm proud of my family, my kids, so that's everything. I'm amazed at how amazing my daughters are, given what an idiot that I am. So that's my wife again. I already said my wife's great, right? So she makes up for me. So in terms of creatively, oh my gosh. I mean, so just recently I'm working on some footage from a Tour de France commercial. So our production company I'm not 100% full-time pickleball. So we still make commercials and other things. And we made a cycling commercial for Highlands, which is pretty cool. And I'm actually working on a revisit of that right now. So that's cool. I'm trying to think. The one that's sort of the sexiest, which is not that fancy, is we did the, when you watch a movie, at the end, the production companies have animated logos. So we created the animated logo for the Kennedy Marshall Company, which aired for the first time at the end of Bourne Supremacy, one of the Bourne Identity films. So that was kind of cool. You see your stuff up on the big screen in a movie theater. So that's kind of fun, I'd say.
Yeah.
But there's some of the nonprofit stuff I've done probably is also, it's not that fancy, but I know it touched lives. So that's a different kind of thing.
All right. We got a couple questions here from Jennifer Lucore and Alex Hamner.
Hey, Alex.
Yeah, I'm coming.
Come here. Hey, Rusty from the Pickleball Channel's going to be on. And
nice.
We need to ask him a question.
Okay.
But before you say that, I want you all to know that the Pickleball Channel has been around since 2014. That's when we had the first media group, so that's a very long time.
That's a pretty cool bit of history right there.
Exactly. So, question, what do you think?
Well, so I have a question kind of like that. So, you've been, Rusty, involved with pickleball since at least 2014, and so you've been to a lot of tournaments. But how many tournaments have you played in?
So, yes, the answer is 0. I've played in 0 tournaments. I've played in 0 round robins. I joked about, it's like, so now that I'm over 50 and Alex and Jen are over 50, I think I joked recently with Jennifer saying, hey, do you want to sandbag or something and play with me or something? That'd be a coup if I could get one of them as a mixed doubles partner. But I've tried to decide, do I go to SoCal Classic? Because that sort of was earlier in the career. Or do I go to Huntsman? I'm trying to figure out what's the first official thing I should play in, but it has to be something that I don't have to work.
Right.
Otherwise they'd be like, hey, we're about to go live. Hang on. I'm doing better than I thought. I have a lot of people Steve Taylor worked with me a lot, and a lot of people know Steve, and Steve fell in love with pickleball and sort of he'd say, well, he's like, I'm going to play sucky. I know I'm going to be 2 and out, so it won't be an issue. But, what if you have a good day? Sorry, we can't go live. Rusty might get a medal,
We actually have a second question here from Jennifer and Alex that I'm going to play now.
I've heard a rumor.
Rumor Studios.
That's the one.
Hey, Rusty. So Rumor Studios must be something besides pickleball.
I don't know why.
I know. So what does Rumor Studios do?
Okay. I love the two of them, right? That's always doing that playful fair. Actually, one of my favorite, well, not favorite. Yeah, sure. One of my favorite. It's just silly. We did a myth busting kitchen thing with Jennifer and Alex, and we were silly with it. So, and even the the ultimate non-volley zone rule video, we got a little silly. So it's always fun working with them. Anyway, so so Rumor Studios is the name of our production company. So the production company that runs or creates Pickleball Channel content is Rumor Studios. It's spelled Rumer. We founded the company when my wife was working on a movie for Fox. So it wasn't created to be an actual production company. It was just a legal entity at the time to get paid corporately from Fox. And you got to come up with a name. And a friend said, hey, how about Rumor, Rusty Meredith? My name's Rusty, her name's Meredith. We slapped them together. That became Rumor Studios. It actually ironically drives me crazy because everybody has a hard time spelling it, and I've wanted to change the name forever, but it's been 20 years now. So we our team obviously can make things like Pickleball Channel, but we do other commercials. We've worked with advertising agencies or corporations to do branded content and commercials and motion graphics and things like that, or the Kennedy Marshall. So Rumor Studios produced the animated logo for Kennedy Marshall Company. Kennedy Marshall is Frank Marshall, Kathleen Kennedy. Kathleen Kennedy now's with, whatever, it doesn't matter. You guys can look it up, IMDb.
We got a couple here from our friend Steve Paranto.
Hi, Rusty. Hey, when I first met you in the Pickleball Channel, you guys were the only legit professional media source for the pickleball community. I'll never forget the time you guys came out to my backyard court and we filmed a couple segments, and you guys were there all day just to film a couple of 10-minute segments. Very professionally done. Well, nowadays, there's so many people that are out there putting pickleball content using just their phone because technology's changed. How are you and the Pickleball Channel separating yourself from those people?
So first of all, thank you, Steve. It was an honor to meet you and meet your dad, and we're so glad, especially now that he's passed, that we were able to kind of tell your family story and tell his story. So thank you for that. And I mean, I think in terms of how are we separating ourselves, I think our goal is not so much how do we separate, but just how do we keep pushing forward. What we do isn't really rocket science. Like I've said, there's something in terms of how we do it. I like to think we are good instructors, that we really know how to break something down and show it well. Anybody can turn on a camera. So we try to differentiate with good use of the angles and the storytelling to try to make sure someone really learns something from it. Production value, definitely there's an element, like I think to answer Carl's question, more and more people are able to do things. And so we want to look at, how can we keep growing the sport? And so that potentially means going beyond what we started. I think now that we've proven ourselves, there's also opportunities to collaborate with other people. And we're looking at potentially having tiers of content, just like even, so you might have like a tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. And I've had some conversations with people that potentially might be able to cover things, and because not everything can have the same budget. But maybe there's opportunities where we get together with somebody, say, hey, let's broadcast this in the Pickleball Channel. We'll work with you to get this to here. So we're actually considering not so much separating, but maybe some interesting collaborations. But we will always try to push things forward. We will always try to do the best with what we have. Even 3 people can pick up an iPhone and one person shoots it and another person shoots it and the other one looks better. So we will always try to kind of make our quality as good as possible. But I would love it, as for the quality to just keep going up and up and up, So I think that's what's exciting for me, because, the downside is then people's expectations go up and it's harder to get away with it, to get away with something, but the upside is it elevates the sport. You have less and less low-end content that someone thinks like, oh, this is like low-end local intramural sports. This isn't really a real thing. But so it's exciting as that content goes up and gets quality. But I also would hope that some of the people, just because you can make it doesn't mean you should make it. And that's a very hard conversation to have with somebody.
Here is the second question from Steve.
In the future, I do believe that pickleball is going to be a popular televised viewer event for channels like ESPN. What do you see us do in the future to make us look really popular on TV? The players know it's fun and exciting, but how do you make that look even more fun and exciting on film?
Well, thank you again, Steve. That's a tough one. I definitely think there's an element to where, in order for it to work on a they call it linear, right? So if you go into traditional TV, you have a fixed amount of time. Here's your slot. But the world as we know it is changing. Even this coronavirus thing's changing. So if the industry for several years continues with it's going to start at 7 o'clock and it's going to end at this time, then the industry will have to become media first in its planning and execution. What I mean is, in the beginning of what we did, we'd have to be like, hey, it's Pickleball Channel. You don't know who we are, but it's going to be good, I promise. Can we do this? And then you get to the point where you sort of say, okay, so, hey, guys, we're here. And then you get to the point where you tell the ref, like, you can't roll until we're back from commercial. So the sport, and even some of the players in the early days, some of the players would get kind of pissy about it. I was even at a tournament where, like, we're spending thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to cover this thing. And someone's like, oh, I got to, can we get going? And I'm like, no, like, do you want to be a professional athlete or do you want to be a recreational person who, so there's that dance. I think the sport, the players and the tournaments will have to be, and the pros in particular, will get more and more used to following the lead of the media's execution, if that makes sense. And there'll be a collaboration and a synthesis. And the smoother that gets, then the smoother the production becomes, which elevates it for the viewer. I think in terms of where we're at, I talked about additional cameras. Having multi-camera coverage, like we were the people who kind of invented this camera at the net. Tennis typically doesn't have that. And so I was like, if you have a 25 hit session at the net, you should switch your camera angle because it feels different. Now, some people hate it. So we're still learning, we're constantly collecting data at some level and feedback for what's the best way to do it. Some people say, I love the commentary. Some people say, I hate the commentary. Some people say, mute the commentary, it sucks. Some people say, you don't have to narrate. And so the sport is so young. We're still trying to figure out what the audience wants. And so conceptually answer Steve's question, a lot of people don't realize, I believe people have to consider sort of what they're doing with the audience and how that affects the industry, not just what they make. So we try to strategically look at those variables, and we believe that we are creating and developing an audience, not just showing an existing audience. Does that make sense? When we started, there was no audience because there was no content. So I have to figure out, how do I build the audience? And maybe I'm actually going to teach the audience what to expect. So am I drafting what the audience wants, or am I giving the audience what I think they want and that they fall in love with later? And there's that dance between what works. And then of course you have feasibility. So sometimes it's just like, sorry, I can't put the camera there because the first year at the US Open, terms like, okay, we got people sitting everywhere. And so I'm like, how am I going to get this shot? Someone paid $5,000 for this box. And I'd be like, excuse me.
Right.
So I made friends with Steve. He's British, Stephen Cartwright. I can't remember. So I made friends with the guy who was in the box, and I was like, can I put my camera in your box? I'll try not to block your view. So we're negotiating. So I think part of that kind of plays into kind of how it'll work and how's it more entertaining to the masses. It's definitely gotten faster. So that helps. But at the end of the day, you have to grow fans. So we are trying to develop fan-based audiences in addition to participant-based audiences. Does that make sense? What I mean is, if you think about basketball and football, two guys in a bar will get in a fist fight over two football teams. And you ask them, did you play college ball? No. Do you currently regularly play football? No. And they're passionate as fans. Pickleball is still primarily a player-based audience. So to cross over to making, national media really excited, you have to sort of get people interested in what they're watching, whether or not they play it at some level. And part of that's how fast it moves, how you cut it. But there's a ton of people who hate golf and a ton of people who hate tennis and would never, ever watch it. So you have to grow. You have to keep growing the sport. You got to keep growing the sport, keep growing the recreational players. That's why what we do is multi-pronged approach as it relates to the industry. I don't know. A lot of people think, oh, Pickleball Channel just makes videos, but we're always thinking about how do we leverage. This goes back to copyright. If someone's going to use my copyright and promote the heck out of me and promote the heck out of the brands that I'm working with, whether it's Minto or Paddletech, that's awesome. I believe that we, more than almost anybody else in the industry, promote everybody else more than anybody else. Because I know that if Pickleball Channel isn't trying to help anybody who might be in my thing, whether they paid me or not, the industry is not going to go where it should go. If Eddie and Webby and us and everybody starts to think about how can I grow someone else's business or consulting or whatever, then the industry grows, the fans grow, they love you more, they watch you more, and then we're on bigger TV.
We still got a couple more questions here. Why don't we go on
All right.
From our friend Byron Freso.
Hi, Rusty. This is Byron Freso. How are you? Recently, I have not seen you at many of the pickleball tournaments, videotaping all the matches, and I was wondering, what is your business reason? Secondly, are you going to be ever doing any live streaming?
And just to clarify, I think by live streaming, maybe more like what we're doing now, live streaming some maybe interviews or other pickleball related things other than actual matches.
Yes. Well, hello, Byron. He's always been very helpful and a supporter, and I don't know, there's just so many great people. So hello to you and Marcia. I really appreciate what you guys have done and how you've encouraged us. So it's a bit of a bummer, right? Because like I said, we were really gearing up to investing heavily at the US Open. So this question would have potentially not been as relevant because we would have had a whole team, the other week out at that tournament. But definitely we don't go to as many tournaments as other folks. So in terms of the business reason, as a number of tournaments have grown and expanded, some tournaments have chosen to court us or work with us more, if that makes sense. Sometimes it's just logistics in terms of which ones we can or can't go to. I'm still married with kids. I have teams. And so, my one daughter's in her second to last. So sometimes how often do I leave the home and go out? But a little bit, this isn't any kind of an insult at any level. We do sort of, the US Open is a major tournament. And we have a great relationship with Chris and Terry, what they have done with that tournament. Year number one was like 700 something. And, now you're at 2,300. And even their willingness to cancel the whole tournament and not step on the toes of other small tournaments. So committing to that tournament at that level then rules out other tournaments. So some of it's just logistics, some of it's timing, some of it's budget. And to answer this, so yes, we plan on doing more tournaments, but if there's a different thing, we have so yes, I guess we are planning on doing some more live type things that are not just live matches and looking at what that means. I'm trying to come up with some ideas that relate more to kind of community, not just necessarily pro tournaments, because I still feel that the heart and the masses, there's something really special about the local community in Georgia or the local community somewhere else. And so how do we continue to support and grow all of those people, even some of the ones that might never go to tournaments? So we're coming up with ideas. I don't know what that'll look like. But certainly it's fun to be on this show.
Another video question here. And this is from somebody who I'm a big fan of. I know Webby's a big fan of too. And that is
all right, we'll see.
Irina Tereschenko.
Hey, Eddie and Webby. Hey, everybody. Irina Tereschenko's here. Rusty, really missed hanging out with you at the US Open, as well as your crew. 3 questions for you. What is your favorite part of the production process? Is there a part of the production process that you actually don't know how to do? And can you give us a blue steel, a famous look by Ben Stiller in Zoolander? Thank you.
Oh, my gosh. I think... I don't know if I joked about blue steel with her. So my hair's getting a little longer, right? But I regularly have spiky brown hair, and a number of people think I look like Ben Stiller. So will I do a blue steel? Let's see.
Yeah.
I guess I have to clench my jaw a little bit more.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, that is pretty good. That is good, yeah.
So There you go. Thank you. And so now Melissa's mom can realize that I'm willing to do blue steel. So in terms of the production process, my favorite part of the production process is probably just the community and the relationships and stuff. So I'm an extrovert. And so working with my team, even if I can do something by myself, if I'm editing, I'd be like, hey, sit here with me and, be together. So I enjoy, it's almost impossible to do what I do and not have a team. So I love the team. I think is there a part of the production process I don't know how to do? Well, I'd say I'm not that great compared to the guys that I work with, right? So there's a filmmaker who's better with the camera. There's somebody else who's better with editing. technically, I don't know how to do 3D animations in Cinema 4D or in Maya. We don't do a lot of 3D. So I would say maybe that part, I could produce that part. I know enough to lead people, but hands-on, I've never technically done a wire rigging of a 3D model. But anyway, whatever.
Good stuff.
Yeah. Super interesting for people, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Pickleball addicting and fun, that's no joke. Pickleballing, it's not just for old folks. Pickleball.